This is the bull lyre. It was produced from about 2500 or 2550 to about 2400 BCE. It is a mixed media piece. That means that beginning in about 3000 BCE, Sumerian artisans worked in various metals, and then they combined these metals with other materials. We call this mixed media. So this is made of wood, gold, silver, bitumen, shell, and lapis lazuli. It's made of very expensive materials, so it was produced, we can tell that it was produced for an elite person. According to recent studies, it was actually found in the tomb of a queen. Sometimes people say it was from a king's tomb, but we think now that it was found in a queen's tomb from Europe. The bull head, as you can see here on the front of the lyre, is stylized and has that very kind of stereotypical Near Eastern looking beard that we've seen in so many other artworks. And it's very blue here, obviously. And the bull and his beard actually project, so it actually is like a three-dimensional sculpture attached to this background. Now, a lyre is a musical instrument. It's kind of like a harp. So what is going on in these images? They are, if you look at them closely, which I have this cut out here so you can actually see them more closely, it looks insane. So let's kind of talk about what's going on in each register. Now, one thing I should note is that the wood backing on this lyre has actually been reconstructed. As you know, wood does not survive very long, so the wood part has been reconstructed. The scenes that we're going to look at that are broken down into the 4 registers are created with shell and inlaid in bitumen. And they're about, all 4 scenes put together are about 13 inches. The bull himself, this three-dimensional bull, is sacred to the god Shamash. Some people say that it is a representation or an aspect of Shamash, but some people just say he is sacred to Shamash, and Shamash is the sun god. This is connected to resurrection, so Shamash actually plays a role in mythology, connecting him to resurrection. He can go into the underworld and he can rise with the sunrise. So this theme is already setting a tone about death, and we have found this lyre in a tomb. And also lyres were actually commonly played at funerals. So we're already kind of setting this theme of either funerary rituals or death by these features. Okay, so back to these registers. So the very bottom register, we have a scorpion man. So here is Scorpion Man right here. And he is the guardian of the entrance to the underworld, and he is holding a beaker or a cylindrical object in his hand. He is attended by a gazelle who stands on his hind legs, and here's the gazelle over here. And then the gazelle is holding 2 tall cups that he's filled from this large vase over here. We can see that there is a vessel inside of this vase that they have been using to ladle out whatever is in this vase and put into these cups. In the next register, we actually have a trio of animal musicians. We have a seated donkey. Here's Mr. Donkey right here, and he is playing the bull lyre. So the one very similar or the very same one that we are talking about right here. We can see that right there. There's the bull's head right there. So here's the donkey playing that bull lyre. And we have a bear right here who is supporting the bull lyre, holding it up so that it doesn't fall as the donkey plays it. We also have a seated animal right here. He's been identified as a fox who plays a small percussion instrument, maybe a rattle or a flute. In the next level, we have 2 animal attendants. They are walking erect and bringing food and drink for a feast. We have a hyena over here, and he is carrying a tray or a table filled with pork and mutton. And you can actually see his butcher knife here tucked into his belt. And on the other side, we have a lion who is carrying a large jar and a pouring vessel. At the top, right here, we have a man with long hair and a full beard who is pretty much naked except for this kind of fancy belt right here. And he is either embracing or wrestling or holding these two bulls that have human heads that actually look very similar to his own. And also recall the bull on the front as well. This representation of a man embracing or wrestling with animals may represent royal control over nature. Now, what does all this mean? Because this is just really seems very random. It's like I said before, it's likely something to do with funeral rituals. Lyres were often used in funerary rites and are found in graves. It could be explaining the process of death. It could be this iconography, the story where images, with images that refer to a narrative or have some sort of allegorical meaning. It has also been interpreted as depicting a story from Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh is the first epic literature. I mentioned it before with cuneiform. And basically how the story goes. Okay, so Gilgamesh is the legendary 5th king of Uruk. And when he first comes to rule, he is an awful king. He is a tyrant. He is battle hungry. And then he decides to go on, something happens and he decides to go on some adventures. And so he goes on adventures, and when he comes back from these adventures, he is a changed man. And he is a good man and a great king. And he is known as like one of the best kings of Uruk. So it's this story about his transformation and his rule. So along the story, during these adventures, he meets this guy. And at first he like totally hates this guy's face. They get into a fight, and then how guys often do after the fight, they become besties. So he and his besties kind of continue on their adventure, and eventually his friend dies. So scholars think that this scene here on this bull lyre might be referring to the funeral in Gilgamesh, in the literature of Gilgamesh, where it talks about his friend dying. So it may depict the realm of the dead and an offering feast to the goddess of the underworld. This makes sense because, one, we actually think this guy could represent Gilgamesh. So this is a fairly confirmed representation of Gilgamesh over here. And you can see he is holding this lion in kind of a similar way to this guy is here. So could be a representation of Gilgamesh. Okay, so fine, it's talking about this story that happened in Gilgamesh, but why the animals? Well, animals are often in scenes of funerals because they are the guardians of the gateway to the underworld. So the dead actually has to pass through this gateway where the animals guard. So they become involved in these funerary rituals. So some of the big themes of this piece is, of course, the connection to Gilgamesh and his story. Also showing us the human cycle, funerary rituals, a king's control over nature, and the judgment of Shamash, connecting Shamash to that bull figure over here, and he is kind of residing over this scene. Also, one thing to note is, okay, here's the bull over here. His beard is actually covering most of the scene. So people couldn't see the scene. Why depict it if you can't see it? Well, remember, the gods are super needy, and they can see everything. They don't actually need the bull to move his beard so they can see it. They can see everything. So probably created for them.